doing this series for April. We're looking at some of the ideas that are found in a couple of books. These ones up here. The first one is called Get Over It. The Truth About What You Know That Just Ain't So. And the second one is entitled Get Over These Two. More Truth About What You Know That Just Ain't So. And it's co-written by that smiling fella up there. That's Reverend Paul Hasselbeck. He's a Unity minister who was the Dean of Spiritual Education and Enrichment at Unity Village for many years. And one of the things that he likes to say, and that's probably what he's saying in that picture right there, he always says, it's a beautiful day, it's always a beautiful day in my consciousness. It's always a beautiful day in my consciousness. So in this book's introduction, he asks a very important question. He says, are you ready to be challenged again? Are you ready to question some of the euphemisms, platitudes, and stock phrases that we use in everyday conversation? Sometimes the language that we use can keep us stuck in outdated concepts, and it's amazing how much insight and practical wisdom we can gain by looking at commonly accepted sayings and taking them even deeper. Now, as I said last week, this is not about banning language or banning statements. It's about expanding it or evolving it, if that's something that's comfortable. And the phrase we're going to discuss today that Paul wants us to think about getting over is this one. Everything happens for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. Well, that sounds reasonable, right? At first, it sounds perfectly reasonable because, of course, everything happens for a reason. If you happen to be a determinist, it's all about cause and effect, right? Everything happens for a reason in terms of cause and effect. Every effect has a cause, and that cause is the effect of a prior cause, and it goes back and so on, cause and effect, theoretically all the way back to the beginning of time. But is this really what we mean when we hear that phrase and when we use it? Everything happens for a reason. What is our expectation when we hear it? Well, Paul tells us that this phrase is generally used in one of two situations. The first one is when there seems to be no apparent reason for an event or a situation. The second one is when something bad happens that has no reasonable explanation. And so we go looking, we go hunting, we have to explain it. There has to be a reason or a purpose behind this. Is that true? That's what we're talking about today. And I think we have to start by asking just exactly what do we mean by this word reason. Usually, we're thinking about an intention, a plan, a goal that drove the situation, that caused it to come about. It's like when a composer creates a symphony. All of the notes, all of the instruments are arranged in a certain order to bring about this end result that the composer envisioned and intended when she sat down to write the piece. The reason the composer did that was to achieve a particular result. So this definition presupposes the existence of some kind of a composer entity, an invisible thinker, usually out there someplace, who puts everything together the way human beings design and put things together. And we have all of these metaphors that we like to use, right? You've probably heard at least one of them. The divine watchmaker, or the composer, the potter's hand. How about that one? You are the potter, I'm just a lump of clay. Mold me, right? Wow. Talk about something that's disempowering. I'm a lump of clay. The problem with this whole approach is that what we end up doing is we create a God in our image and likeness. Human beings become the very pinnacle of creation. We are it. We are ultimate. the greatest accomplishment of God or the universe, of course, everything happens for a reason, and it all has to do with me. Yeah, me. Imagine that. An entire universe that revolves around me. That's what we think it looks like sometimes, right? The truth is that it looks more like this. Or a speck off on the sidelines, right? That's the way it really looks. When we say that everything happens for a reason, we're implying that there's some reason that's unknown to us, but is known to an entity out there someplace who thinks and acts more or less the way we do and does things for kind of the same reasons we do. It suggests the guy in the sky who's trying to tell us something, and our job is to figure it out. So here we've created this concept of God as something that's separate from us, that is engineering and controlling the events of the world and our lives. And what does that do to the idea of our essential oneness, both physically and in consciousness? I think one of the primary and most powerful and empowering teachings in unity is that there is one presence and one power that expresses constantly as me and through me and everything else. The divine logos. Pick whatever name you want for it. Principle. Whatever works for you. Whenever we say anything that externalizes that power or separates us from it, we once again create duality and we water down the strength of our message. We are not lab rats in some sort of cosmic experiment. We're not being tested by a divine mad scientist who inflicts challenges and disasters to see how we react, to try to teach us something. And by the way, that's the corollary to everything happens for a reason. The corollary is this is a test. This was sent as a test. We run into a health challenge, for example, and we say it's a test, as if there's this entity that would or could allow or even cause pain and suffering so long as we learn something from it, right? Or come out stronger. Not a very flattering picture of a God entity, is it? That's not to say that we don't learn things from adversity. We most certainly do. We can come through wiser and stronger. We often do, but that doesn't mean that it was the justifying reason for making that happen in the first place, to make us come through wiser and stronger. We get to choose how to proceed in the face of a challenge, and that's how the good shows up. That's how the good can show up in the situation. The good shows up in what we bring to it. So it doesn't matter if there's a reason or not. It wasn't meant for good. We bring out the good. We find it. We sometimes create it. It's all a matter of how we respond. Whenever we choose to see the hand of a remote God entity sending challenges and even atrocities to test us or for some other unknown reasons, it also implies that maybe we can persuade that remote entity to spare us, right? To let us off the hook. Give someone else that challenge. That's usually how it shows up, right? Hey, send it to someone else. There's a story I've mentioned before about a hurricane bearing down on a town along the Gulf Coast. People in this one little town directly in the path of the hurricane, they're in church, and they're all praying that this hurricane would miss them. Well, what about the folks in the town down there? Or what about the folks in the town up there? Hey, everything happens for a reason. Maybe they needed a hurricane as some sort of a life lesson or test. Who cares? Everything happens for a reason, and the whole thing becomes this twisted metaphysical slippery slope that leads to all sorts of error thinking. We don't want to perpetuate that kind of thinking, and that's the kind of thinking that we hear from certain preachers that I'm sure we've all listened to, who insist that natural disasters are forms of divine retribution. I did some research, and for every natural disaster going back to Hurricane Katrina, you can find a preacher who gets in the news and who insists that the disaster was due to God judging us because of gay people. It's always gay people. The scapegoats of our age. Those preachers take their own God. This is what they do. These preachers take the God that they revere and they turn it into a psychotic tyrant with really, really lousy aim, because for sure some innocent members of those preachers' own denominations were killed or rendered homeless by that disaster that God sent to kill gay people and other folks that support them. It's crazy. They call it collateral damage. They say, well, God didn't really kill those people. The sinners did it by displeasing Him. I mean, that's almost Orwellian doublespeak. Up becomes down and left becomes right. Talk about some serious error thinking. Nope. Hurricanes are not retribution. They're an unavoidable part of life on planet Earth. The same sun that creates the beautiful sunrise and sunsets and warms our days also brings about the conditions that cause hurricanes and storms. The oceans that sustain us can rise up as tsunamis. Wonders of the world like the Grand Canyon or the Sierra Nevada range also mean that earthquakes are possible, and so on and so forth. So, what do we choose to see? What do we choose to focus on? Are we going to focus on the negative stuff that happens, or are we going to focus on the true, the good, and the beautiful that is all around us for the vast majority of the time? We gather here on Sundays to affirm that we choose to see and celebrate the true, the good, and the beautiful, and to know and trust that those things can see us through any challenge. I think the only reasonable conclusion is that the reason isn't so important. What's most important is our response. From what state of consciousness am I responding? Stuff happens. Some of it's self-inflicted. The Holocaust, the classic example of the worst in human history, that was a man-made disaster. That was a human-caused disaster. That was done by depraved human beings. So are wars. So are crimes. People make bad choices, selfish choices, ignorant and cruel choices. And then there are the natural disasters. Fault lines shift, cause earthquakes. Air masses collide. They cause hurricanes, tornadoes. There's always a cause, but meaning and reason are up to us. That's all up to us. I think one of the reasons, one of the explanations for why the phrase "everything happens for a reason" is so persistent is because we think the alternative is meaninglessness, nihilism, a life without meaning or purpose. And again, here's the thing. We're the ones that bring meaning and purpose to our lives. It isn't given to us. We have to create it. And that's the real gift. And that's the real opportunity that we miss so often. Viktor Frankl survived 3 concentration camps during the Holocaust. Not 1, not 2, but 3 concentration camps, death camps. And he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning, which I think is required reading for everyone with a heartbeat. Searching for meaning and searching for a reason are similar, related endeavors. And what Viktor Frankl realized while he was enduring the hardship and the suffering of the death camps is that we have to stop asking those questions. We have to stop asking, what is the meaning? What is the reason behind this? Here's what he says. Ultimately, man should not ask what the meaning of his life is, but rather must recognize that it is he who is asked. In a word, each man is questioned by life, and he can only answer to life by answering for his own life. To life, he can only respond by being responsible. And then he concludes with this. We needed to stop asking about the meaning of life, and instead to think of ourselves as those who were being questioned by life daily and hourly. Our answer must consist not in talk and meditation, but in right action and in right conduct. Life ultimately means taking the responsibility to find the right answer to its problems and to fulfill the tasks which it constantly sets for each individual. We can only respond by being responsible. Now, some people, I think, have an allergy to the word responsible or responsibility. It's just like commitment and other things. You know, we have this little allergy or a phobia. And I think this is a great way to look at the word responsibility. It means keep responding. Be aware of how we respond. Choose how we respond. How we respond in every situation, but especially in situations that involve a challenge or adversity. If you can find a reason or a cause for something, great. We might learn something from that. But whether you find it or not, and if you don't worry about it. The most important thing is the consciousness that we respond from. Is it a consciousness of fear or lack? If so, can I find a way to change the way I think about the situation? Can I make the shift from fear, lack, self-pity, there's a big one, victimization? Can I make the shift from that consciousness to making some bold affirmations? Affirmations like, I am here to make the best of this. I am here to apply the most noble qualities of my character to this situation. I am here to remain positive and to find the true, the good, and the beautiful. No matter what situation I'm facing, I can bring forth the qualities of justice, perseverance, joy, tranquility, and you can just keep on adding to that list. Whatever virtues are speaking to you. This, in and of itself, is an all-sufficient reason for any situation. You don't have to go beyond it. We don't have to worry about it. Nothing is sent to teach us. Nothing is sent or meant to test us. We get to choose our attitude and our response. And that's another important distinction. Instead of saying, I have to, say, I get to. We get to. I get to do something wonderful, something powerful, something empowering. So, instead of saying everything happens for a reason, try this. Try asking this question. What do I get to make of this? And then go out and make something great of the week ahead of you, and we'll see you next Sunday. Thank you.